it'll start recording. You can, but now we're recording. So this is, and you know, if we go back and look at this later, this mic is pretty bad, so it's not gonna capture the voice nearly as well as my USB mic does. But that's it for the recording stuff. Okay, now we can talk Moodle. Any questions on that?
Are you going to leave that to record?
Yeah, I'll just record, yeah. Okay, so what I thought I'd do maybe is just do a kind of an overview, and then we'll go to the lab and people can work on whatever they need to work on this, and we'll share stuff. This is, to log in, you just go to, here's the site for those of you that want to see it. It's just moodle.pendleton.k12.or.us. And that gets you into the Pendleton High School online homepage. And then here's where I'll create, if you don't already have one, I'll create a username and password for you and give you teacher credentials, which allows you to do lots of stuff. And then that you'll just log in with those. Now, maybe we can take a look, and this is the view. This is not what students see. All the stuff that's sort of grayed out is stuff that they wouldn't see, but we as teachers will see. If we take a student view, it looks much cleaner. I think what I'll do maybe is just give you a quick look, first of all, at what the teacher side of this looks like and what the student side looks like. Like if I go into my geometry class, for example, if I click on that, this is what I see. And so the way the Moodle page is organized, down the center, this, we use this 2-column, which is pretty standard. Down the center are all the assignments and sort of resources that I put there for students. So if we go to, and you do this as you will, but I always put like the test block at the top, and I generally turn that off if we're not taking the test so they don't see it. Course resources, here's where they would go to see my lecture videos. If they click on that, it'll give them a list of all the videos that I link to from YouTube. And then practice tests that they can do from home that are like the test but don't count for anything. And then we start getting into the meat of what we're doing, the actual topics. And I usually just go by the most recent one I put at the top. So for chapter 1, I've got all my PowerPoints. We're just starting chapter 1. We did an algebra review section. I'll go down to that. This is what we just finished. And I've got PowerPoints for each section that we did that they can link to. And I always tell them about how if they don't actually have Microsoft Office, there's some free options that are really just as good. They can either go to openoffice.org and get the OpenOffice suite, which is a fully functional Office substitute, or they can just go even to the Microsoft site and get a free PowerPoint reader. So they can't actually author anything, but they can look at all the PowerPoints if they want to. It's really simple to do, and they've all done that. And they use these quite a bit. If you look at the usage statistics, they go to those quite a bit.
The PowerPoint.
The PowerPoints.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't always use these in class, but sometimes I'll use the entire thing, or sometimes I'll just use pieces of those and write over the top of them on my smartboard. Because if I'm, oops.
The kids use them though.
Kids use them a lot, yeah.
Use what?
The PowerPoint,
PowerPoint.
Especially if
Yeah.
they're absent and then
That's
they
what I
come
was going to
back.
say on the PowerPoint. What's the usage on the YouTube?
Well, the YouTube's different. Now the YouTube, if they go to the YouTube video, the YouTube is actually going to be, well, let's just go to one.
Because you're capturing this right now,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
You're capturing this whole thing, and then you have a PowerPoint that'll go along with that, or they can access YouTube as well?
Right. So
Okay.
they could go to, like for example, we would go through, if I pulled up the order of operations PowerPoint,
That's the practice part.
this is right.
You
I did
clicked
practice.
on the
Whoops.
wrong
Yeah,
one.
wrong one. You go back. Oh, and by the way, up here at the top, this is kind of handy. There's always this little breadcrumb trail of, so I just go right back to geometry to the home page right there. I want to go to resources. So,
Right there.
yeah, so this guy. So if I click on that, it'll just download, whoops, the PowerPoint. Yeah, okay. Open it up, and then they can go through, and usually for them it would pop up, they're set up so, usually it'll just pop up as a slideshow. I don't know why. Maybe it's because this is my teacher account, but this would pop up as, they wouldn't have the choice of editing it. And then if I want to, see, and then as I go through this PowerPoint, I'm recording it. I'm going to write stuff over the top. I can make notes. Whoops. I click on the board to, oh, you know what, it did this again.
Okay, how do we avoid that?
I don't know yet, because I thought
I sent an email to Joe and Heidi, and I almost want to bring her back in here and show her what it's doing.
Yeah, it never's done that in the past, just this year with the Windows 7 it's doing that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it looks like there's some threads on the Active Inspire blog that they're working on it. There's other teachers that have sent in help.
Oh, good,
So
okay.
something's coming.
Yeah, it's, I thought I had it fixed. I made those tweaks I showed you about. I thought it was working for a while in my class. I hadn't seen it happen, and this is the first time I've seen it in a while. But you see what happened?
You were going to show us an example, and then it flipped to the new screen.
And but now I lost my
your
And your
sidebar.
slideshow.
Yeah.
And your slideshow.
Yeah. So I gotta get out of this. And now we're back in it. If I go.
Somehow it's like you have too many windows open and it wants.
Well, but I've done this every year. I'll have tons of windows open. It's never had a problem. Never had a problem.
It's just this year that's going away.
Yeah, that it's doing that. And so what I was going to show you, I wasn't going to do anything. I was just going to write on the top of that. And so all the stuff that I do with the PowerPoints in class, when I'm writing on the top, and sometimes we'll leave the PowerPoint and I'll do an extra problem, all that's captured on the YouTube video. But then the PowerPoint, if they want to pull up the PowerPoint, they're just seeing the PowerPoint is all. They just get the slideshow. But sometimes they just do that instead for whatever reason.
Now, is the PowerPoint interactive? Do they?
Yeah. Oh yeah, they can click through it.
They can click on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so there's that stuff. Now, here are the actual practice, the assignments that they do. And if they click on those, just to give you a taste of what they see, they call everything a quiz. I always tell them, it's not a quiz, this is an assignment. Then it pulls up the assignment and
Number 2.
yeah, and then they get stuff like this, where they're given some problems, and they've got to evaluate those problems, and they'll. This is the algebra type question, Jess. I know this is one of the things you probably were interested in seeing. If they do a problem like this, like let's just say, I won't do the problem, but let's just say they wanted to put in the answer, pretend this, say it's the square root of 3 over 2 or something like that. They could type in, and they know the syntax for this, it's not very complicated. Square root of 2 divided by 3. And then this, I've hooked this up so it uses the latex rendering stuff, and if they hit display response, look what it does. See, it gives them, they can always check to see that what they've done is the correct thing before they actually check it, hit check. And this, I think, is a really valuable skill, because being able to enter the math stuff as a string is getting to be kind of a lost art with it, but you have to be able to do that. They really need to know that lots of times. If they're using, for example, MathCAD or a computer algebra system in college, this is still how you enter all that stuff, is as a math string. So knowing how to use parentheses, and if I want to do something like, let's say, I won't belabor this point too much, but if they want to say 3 divided by the square root of 2 plus 1, so the square root of 2 plus 1 is all on the bottom, this is important for them to learn that has to be. Whoops, I can't type on this thing. That they need those in parentheses. Now, I always tell them to check before they or display response before they input, because a lot of times they'll see that, oh, whoa, the 1 didn't end up in the bottom. How come? Then it teaches them they've got to have it in parentheses.
So they've done some work on the side on a piece of paper.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, that's important.
Yeah.
That's important. What I am having them do, and I'm giving them a whole test grade for this year for keeping up on this, is doing a math notebook, where I've got it in the
They're showing their
criteria. Yeah. All I care about in the math notebook, in the Moodle notebook, is that every assignment they do on here, it's organized. So the way they're going to get evaluated is I'm going to randomly on a check day, I'm gonna pull up a quiz and say,
Bring it.
okay, I wanna see your work for assignment 2.5, get it out, you got a minute. And then I'm just gonna check, and if it looked good, I don't deduct anything from
Right.
their 100 that they're starting with. If it looks crappy, they get deductions, and those add up over the year, and that 100 drops down.
Sure.
So, but anyway, that's what an assignment looks like. If they want to progress through the assignment, if there are multiple pages, one nice thing on the Moodle too is they can navigate the quiz up here. I can go to any question I want just by hitting that the icon. Instead of having to go page by page, it'll take me right down to that question. For big assignments, there may be multiple pages to the assignment.
Was it automatically put that little box up there for you?
Yes, automatically, yeah. And when they're all done then, when they want to submit it, now if they're not done with the assignment, if they're just working on it, but they're not, they're gonna work some more later, it's not due yet, then all they have to do is log out. Every time they check something, it writes to the database, and that's in there for good. If they want to sort of turn it in, so to speak, then they go to finish attempt, and it'll ask them, it'll give them a summary of what they've done and what their marks were. So they really want to turn it in. Oh, I forgot that one, better go back and do it. And then if they really want to do it, they submit all and finish. And then it pops up, are you sure you're turning it in now? You won't be able to go back to it, kind of a thing. And then, yeah, they submit it, and it goes into the grade book. And there it is, it's all graded for you, it's all done.
And you have a grade book set up on.
I do, and in fact, one of the things I'll say is that, to me, I'm really grateful to Tom for allowing me to do my grade book on Moodle, because it saved me a ton of time. I mean, I can remember trying to, especially on Moodle, one of the huge benefits of Moodle, I think if you look at why it's so useful, and it is, if you look at the statistics on this, it's very effective at doing what it's supposed to do. In technical areas, I think especially, where there's a lot of algorithm-generated work, it's huge. There was a big longitudinal and latitudinal study done in Australia at this enormous equivalent of like a community college. And they found that the people that used Moodle in this test environment, and they didn't even use it at a very high level. I mean, frankly, what we're doing in the district is light years ahead of what they were doing. It was pretty lightweight, but they found that teachers that had used it for a period of time, if they compared the results on standardized pre-engineering tests from years past to what they did with Moodle, or they looked in that same year, they looked across the board at what's compared student performance in Moodle, out of Moodle, they saw a 10% increase either way they looked in the performance of these students on these standardized tests. And so, I mean, I think, and that's just one example. You can find a lot of data to show that it really is a good deal.
Now, when they check each question, if they got it wrong, do they have the opportunity
Yes.
to go back?
Well, that's up to you as a teacher.
Right.
On what I typically do on there are sort of three levels of things that I do on Moodle. I typically have the smaller section assignments. You cover section 1.2, there's going to be a relatively short assignment. On those, I set it up to be adaptive mode with no penalties. So what they can do then is they can continually input different answers. They only get credit when they put the right one in, but they're not penalized for wrong answers.
And do you have record of, does it show you how many attempts?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yes.
You have a complete record. It takes a record of everything. There's a record. So if you want to go look at what they've done, you can see all what they've done. You can see where they're making mistakes via their input, and it's all there. On the study guides, which are sort of comprehensive things at the end of the units, that's where I tend to actually add the penalties in there, because it's more of a test prep. Now, they have the option to go back and redo the assignment if they want to. If they make mistakes and they want to improve their score, they can attempt the whole assignment again. But that's up to the discretion of the teacher. You can do that any way you want to. On tests, they obviously lose credit for wrong answers. But sometimes it's, depending on what we're doing, I still on a test may set it up where they're going to lose 50% credit on the first attempt, but they can go back and reattempt it for half credit, depending on the question. But you have that opportunity as well.
When you go back to the quiz, is each question unique to each student?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's the beauty of it.
That's the power of the
Yeah.
thing right there, because they
Yeah.
have a different set of numbers, they just can't, okay.
Yeah, you can set the questions up to be self-generating, so they're,
Right.
and even, there's two approaches to that. And we'll get into this more when we look at a little more depth at how you build the questions and where they're stored. You can build static questions within a certain category, like let's say we're doing solving linear, one-step solving linear equations or something. I could build 15 of those real quickly, by the way, and then I could randomly, on the quiz, I could randomly add one from that group to the assignment or the test. So they're not self-generating, but it's randomly pulling from that group, and so every kid's gonna theoretically get different enough ones that they're gonna think they're all different. And depending on how many you put in there. I mean, if you only had 2, well, maybe they'll figure it out, but if you have 5 or 10, times how many questions on a test, how many permutations are there of that, you know, so. Or you can build questions in like the calculated question type, where it literally is generating a new question based on how you build the question every time. You know, you put a formula in there that replicates the algebra they're doing, and it'll randomly pull in coefficients and things like that, but the answer is changed based on the formula you've created. And that's also not a big deal to do. But that's one of the big benefits is kids really can't cheat. You know, I mean, everybody's getting different stuff. And yet it's all similar enough that when you look at the data of say, a quiz or a homework assignment at the bottom, when you look at the question types, even if it's been randomized for them, what you're looking at is, like question number 4 is the same question for all the kids with just different numbers. So you can still see, aha, that they're doing real poorly on that. You know that the concept is what they're not getting at. Does that make sense?
If I log in and say like, just like you did on that one,
Mhm.
you got 6 questions.
Yeah.
I log in today and I've only finished 3. I come back tomorrow, are 4, 5, and 6 gonna be different problems than they were the day before?
No, they'll be the same. Yeah. They'll be the same, yeah.
Do you have a timeline that they have to finish this?
You can, yeah, there's a ton of ways you can handle that. It's
Okay.
totally up to discretion of the
This
teacher.
is tonight's homework, this.
Yeah, well, yeah, when you set up the assignment, you can literally, I'll go back to this when I set one up, but you can set up the open date and the close date when the assignment opens up and when it goes away. And that shows up on the Moodle calendar. So my guys are just trained, if they ask me when something's due, I would say, I don't know, look at the calendar. That's why it's there, I don't remember. You know, that's, come on, yeah.
But it's right
Yeah.
there, go back.
Yeah,
to the
it's literally, if you go to geometry, how hard is it? They have to go here every day anyway, it's right
It's
there.
right there.
If I pull up a calendar view, if I go to October, I mean, there it is. There are the assignments. They can, if they click on one of these, it links them to the assignment now. They can, oh, that's due tomorrow, I better do it. They can click on it and it goes right back to their attempt. So it really takes you out of the picture for a lot of this stuff.
That falls under category 3 on the performance task evaluation.
Yes.
From the previous.
Yeah. Yeah.
Student initiated.
Yes. It is very student initiated. What else?
You can show them the grades, how the grade breaks.
Yeah, we'll for sure do grades too, yeah. Come on. Oh, this is slow. This is really slow.
I warned you.
You did, I know. And so anyway, this is the center of the screen then is kind of that stuff. Resources, assignments, you know, open up the test. And the tests are, of course, I've got them set up, but I can show you how to do this. They're only accessible from school computers. So even if there were no password, if you try to get to it from home, it says, you know, it gives you a message that says you can't do this. It's prohibited. But then there's a place where you just put a password in too. And you can change the password for every period. At the end of the period, I just put in random stuff. And, you know, so nobody knows what it is. And I go in before you're going to give one and change it and say, okay, today's password is shoes. And then they go in and type it in and they're into the test. And if you look at the settings for each assignment, you'll see that there's just a ton of ways you can deliver. You have really good control as a teacher over how you want that to work. And the timeline thing is key. I mean, you can control that very tightly. Now, getting back to the gradebook issue, one of the big advantages of Moodle is that students have this capacity to go back and redo stuff. You know, and it doesn't cost you a thing as a teacher. Once you've built the assignment, they can go back and retake something without you having to do anything additional. Of course, when they do that, that's going to raise gradebook issues. And for the 2 years that I tried to do this and manually keep up a gradebook, that was time consuming to go back and find the assignments that had been changed,
Mhm.
and then go into the grade book and change them. And what I ultimately ended up doing was I left that up to the students. And like once a week, I would just say, if you updated something, here's the grades, look at them. If you updated something, it's your responsibility to tell me, and then I'll raise your score. Otherwise, I'm not gonna raise your score. And that made it easier. But still, that's a little bit of a hassle. And so I think that, people, to the degree that they're willing to tackle this, like for me right now, all my grades are on Moodle. If parents want to go to access student grades, I copied all the stuff from the ESD. I downloaded a file that had all the usernames and passwords for all the parents. And it's taken me 5 or 6 hours to build this total. But now I've got links. If a parent can log into Moodle and click on their kid and go see their grades in Moodle, and it's way better because it's always up to date. I mean, as soon as a kid can submit something from home on a weekend, and the parent can see the grade change right before their eyes. I don't have to do anything. So it's always up to date. There's never the issue of where do you find time to put that stuff in. It gives them additional information about, they can get a course view and see what their kids are doing in each, how many attempts have they made on each of the assignments. They can go to the logs and see if they're getting on Moodle. They can see when they were on there.
It matches more closely the expectation that exists out in the public.
Yeah.
Penimation, what they're expecting to get with their login through Penimation is just, it's not static, but it's outdated.
Yeah.
Okay, but if they do log into Penimation, is this downloading their grade?
No,
off of this?
no, you can't do it. You
So
can't.
they have to look at your
Right.
They
math
have to look at the
score for their
Moodle.
math.
They
They have to go to the Moodle.
Well, but there's a link, or there isn't yet, but this is just now getting completed for this year. There'll be a link on our webpage where they would go to get to the Penimation link. There'll be a message that says, if your kid has Algebra 2 or Geometry, then go here for grades.
So
And
do
they
you
click on there.
physically do your grades then? From Moodle to Penimation?
No, I don't keep them in Penimation at all.
But then at the end of
But how do
the,
they report then? How do your grades get reported?
at the end of the semester, you still
Semester?
have to go
Oh, yeah,
into
I
the
have to
grade
go
system
in,
and put
I have to go in and put in one grade. I have to go in and put like a master grade.
Oh, so you just
Yeah.
look at your final, okay,
Yeah,
I
Yes.
got
yeah,
you.
mhm, yeah. And so to me, that's been
Yeah.
extremely helpful. It saved me a lot of time.
What happens if you only do partial Moodle and we're in the classroom?
Well, then you'd probably, there's two options. Like in my calculus class, for example, we're not doing very much on Moodle. We do most of it on Math Excel for School, which is another online course room product. And what I do once a week is I download the grades from Math Excel as essentially it's a CBS or CSV file. So it's like an Excel file, and I upload them into Moodle because it's easier for me to keep a grade book in Moodle than it is on Penimation, because I can upload stuff. And so even though I'm not even really using Moodle, I still prefer that grade book to the district grade book, and that's where all my grades are for them. So you could do that. You could add the assignments that are non-Moodle assignments, you could add to Moodle's grade book, or you could just pull the Moodle stuff into the district grade
Or
book.
you could have a Moodle grade and then just pull that grade off.
Yeah, which of course you can do too, yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can download Moodle grades. You can either look at them on the screen, which is frankly the easiest way to do it, just set up 2 windows and just pull them over, or you can download it as a spreadsheet, as an Excel spreadsheet, and then have it right there to go from too.
But that's still a key punch process, like everything.
That's still a key punch process, exactly. Yeah.
Until Penimation makes a commitment to.
And I'm not holding my
to
breath
do
on that one.
import.
Now, there are other, Penimation just happens to be, in my view, a bad one. There are other, like I know that the district that I'm doing some work with sort of outside of school in Oregon City on some stuff like this, they're using a different grade book, and we can upload stuff.
Power school,
It might be Power School, yeah. Can't remember what it's called.
Just
but-
heard about that.
that's what
Yeah.
that is.
Yeah. And so that's really nice. I mean, then it wouldn't even be an issue. And I think, I don't know this for sure, but isn't our contract with Penimation up pretty soon?
We can only hope.
I think it, yeah, exactly. I think it is. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think this is, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Okay.
So if we're
Yeah.
doing half and half,
Mhm.
some of it through Moodle and some of it through Penimation, and you're wanting to get those grades to Moodle, because that's easier, can you copy part of your assignments from Penimation?
Into Moodle. I don't know if you can download stuff as
Or
an
do you
Excel
have
file.
to key punch all of those grades back in?
Well, it wouldn't be worth doing unless you could download it from Penimation. I honestly think, being realistic about this, I think that this year it's going to be pretty hard for a lot of people to jump in and do the grade stuff with the parent stuff on Moodle. That'd probably be something that we'd have to maybe look at over, you know, at the end of this year for next year kind of a thing. But it's out there, and it's, yeah, I hope I'm not shooting myself in the foot by doing this where the district doesn't want to do this and I can't do anything. But I mean, to me, this is an item where the district, this is a key area where we could take a huge amount of stuff off of teachers' plates and create a better product at the same time. And I think that you can't ignore that that's the direction that things are going. And so I have to believe that this is something that people should be able to do in the future. Yeah.
Well, the thing with the grades is that, you know, you could feasibly do it if you were the only person in that specific, like, Algebra 1. But, like, so Eric and I both teach geometry, and so we basically have to agree on everything.
Right.
And so last year I went to him and I said, I want notebooks put in there. So he put it in there. You can scroll down to see where the notebooks are. Anyway, I said, I really want a notebook check on it.
Yeah.
And so I have to physically go in and enter, and we did this last year, and we're like, okay, we're gonna do it at a time which nobody's probably gonna be online, and lo and behold, one of Eric's students logged on. My grade went down. But we spent like an hour, maybe an hour. I entered in my notebook checks, because he didn't do them last year. I entered in my notebooks checks, copied down my grades really fast, and then he took it back out, because you basically have to agree on everything that goes in.
Well, that's not necessarily true anymore. You can split a course into groups, and you can have certain assignments. And we haven't done this yet, but I'm almost certain you can do this.
Okay.
Where within the groups, like, see, we've got groups set up. If I go to, let's go back to, I guess we're still in geometry. If I go up to users and go to groups, see, look how we have this set up. I don't know if yours aren't all. You're gonna probably have to go in and I'll show you individually how to clean those up a little bit. But like I always make sure that all of my students, if there's ever a schedule change, I change it on here right away. So it's like if I go to period 5, period 6, period 7, those are the students that are in my classes. If I want to change something, change a due date, I have the capacity to a limited degree to do that within the groups. And then I made another group that's all my sections combined. And that's something like that's what we need to do on a Wednesday morning.
I know, but it's harder when like I got a student from you, and you know, you've gotten them from me. It's that we need to move them from.
Which is super easy to do. If I want to move a kid, I can just go to, like, if I want to move a kid from my 6th period, I just go there, add remove users, and I can highlight them here and hit remove, or I can type in the name.
They don't want to lose their grades though.
They don't. Everything, that's only the group they're in. All their stuff goes with them.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
it takes everything with them. It's just how when I want to look at group views, like typically if I'm lecturing in class and we've done an assignment and I want to know, I'm in period 3, and I want to know how period 3 do, I can, on that assignment, I can go to period 3 and scroll down to the bottom and see exactly how, as a group, we're doing on all these different questions and where we're having trouble. And if there's one we're having trouble with, I can just click on an example of that, take a snapshot, put it on my Promethean board, and we go to town. We work on it. So it's just immediate, you know, it's really what PLC seeks to do, just done very efficiently without having to talk about it for half an hour. You just, oh, there it is, that's the one I need. And then there it is. So,
Remember, this is all being recorded.
yeah, I know. So, I'll probably be in some other district at the end of this, but feel free to contact me if you need help. Yeah. So it's easy to move people around, and everything they do is portable, goes with them. Okay.
But that's why, I'm gonna iterate it again, that's why, because we move kids around, that's why Eric and I do everything that's alike.
Okay, now, and there's another option on that too.
Is there?
It made sense for us to do that again this year, I think. But as people get to be, you know, really more proficient with this, it's easy for us to create different courses for different people where you actually have, like we could have Algebra 2 Oya, Algebra, you know, whatever, Algebra 2 Jones. And then it's totally up to you. Now, you can still share the same questions.
But what if you move what if a student moves?
That's
between-
okay.
You know how they're
It's-
moving right now.
Well, it's easy to do. If a student is enrolled, then I can upload them from, I can download them from one course and upload them to another course with their grades intact. So that's not hard to do.
Up to that point without putting grades in to
The-
certain categories.
The only thing you have to do is that the courses, that the assignments have to be named the same thing. And then even if they're missing certain, but that's easy to do. I mean, we can have, that's not hard to coordinate, I don't think. When you're making the assignment, we would just have to have, either you would have to check what mine is or I have to check what yours is. And of course, as teachers, we can go see. And then even if there are certain assignments that don't match up, the ones that do will be transported. So if you have additional assignments that I don't have, it's not gonna trade that information. But the stuff that we have in common, I can pull a kid from one course to another and everything goes with them. That's easy enough to do. And that's a more advanced topic. I'm not gonna do that right now for everybody, but it's easy to do.
Now, you were talking that you do PowerPoints.
Mhm.
You do those versus Promethean so that the kids can access them at home?
Well, no, when I do a PowerPoint, I always do it within the Promethean board,
Okay.
so I can write over the top and
Right.
do all that. Because the PowerPoints are a little bit static on their own,
Right.
but if you can go in and actually write on them, leave them and go do an extra example when you want to and go back to them, then I think they're much more useful as in-class stuff.
Mhm.
Now, the PowerPoints are available as a link for the kids, just the static clickable PowerPoints are still there too. Does that make sense?
So you can save it both as a Promethean and as a PowerPoint?
Mm-hmm. Well, what I'm doing, like I'm recording this, so they're gonna
Right.
get, what they would get, they won't actually get a flip chart, because I don't think they have the capacity, they don't have the Active Inspire software at home to use
Right.
anyway.
Right.
But they'll either get access to the PowerPoint or a YouTube video of me going through the stuff in class. So those are their choices, yeah.
So when you create it though, it's Promethean or is it a PowerPoint when you create it?
I rarely create them, I just get them from other teachers and use them, the PowerPoints. I might go in and edit them, but I generally don't write the PowerPoints, I just pirate them and make little changes. But then I always do it in Active Inspire, yeah, if that's your question, yeah. Everything I do, see, if you click this little button right here, everything I do is from within Active Inspire so that I have this toolkit to use. I can write
Right.
over the top of anything. I can pull,
Okay.
you know what I mean?
Do you have Algebra 1 PowerPoints in already?
Yeah, I do.
You said you've done some
Yeah.
of them.
I do. I've got, the ones from the book are there, but then also there's this teacher I found who created a bunch of really good PowerPoints that I pulled them all in and used them. And I've added them to the 1.5 class and also to the 1 class. And they're really more Algebra 1 based. They're out of our book, actually. They're based on our textbook.
Oh, there you go.
So, yeah, they're good. Okay, so other questions on that? Does that sort of, I know this is rambling, does that kind of make sense, how that all works in the middle? On the sides, you'll see these other blocks that you can add. You can do blocks with blogs if you want. You can do, there's a big component, sort of a social networking component that I haven't used, but other teachers have. And Moodle, if you're interested in that, I'm probably the wrong guy to ask, but there's a wealth of information. If you just Google a Moodle issue, Moodle is so extensively used that you will get more information than you know what to do with. And it's good information.
Prem uses the blog.
Yeah, and he'd be a good one to talk to about that. I think this is a good environment in which to do that because it's so secure. You know, if a kid has a Moodle account, then nobody else, I mean, it is, you can't hack this from the outside. It's just impossible to do. I mean, nobody from the outside is going to get into that Moodle environment. So the blogs are, you're blogging with people from within that Moodle environment only.
If you set the restrictions, like on the test.
Right. Right. And the thing that I've actually wanted to do for years, and I just never had time to do it, is to do like a wiki, to build a classroom wiki in Algebra 1, for example, where everybody, you know, they contribute the definitions, and you could even set it up where the whole class has access to it on a test or something, so they're building, you know, they're building the wiki themselves of information that then they can all draw upon. And I've seen people in the forums that do this and love it, and I've just never had a chance to do it, so. Yeah, I think it'd be kind of a cool thing to do, though. You know, you can control these little blocks on the side. You can add stuff for calendars, what the kids get to see. I always let them see grades. And I haven't done a lot with this. every once in a while, I'll put like a YouTube video link on the side or something, but I haven't done as much as a lot of teachers do with this. It's, my experience with Moodle, to be honest, has been sort of very, very deep in a handful of areas, but not very broad. I mean, there's just so much stuff out there that I've never even looked at that I'd love to, but just haven't had time. For example, one thing, I use quizzes. I just use the assignments as quizzes, but there's this whole new approach to doing instructional stuff in Moodle that just seems awesome. You can do what's called a lesson. And the lessons, you can click through them like a slideshow to get the different problems. You can control when you move from one lesson to the next. You have to get a certain score to move on to the next stuff, which you can do with quizzes now too that I haven't even bothered with. But you can conditionally control access to quizzes and tests and all that stuff based on their performance and other activities. Which, you know, I mean, there's just a wealth of stuff you could do with that, I think. I just haven't had time to think about it. All right, so what else? Questions so far? You want to see what it looks like from a kid's perspective. From a kid's perspective, if I go over here and switch my roll up to student, see, that's what they see. It's a much cleaner look. They don't see all the other stuff. They just see what I choose for them to see. I can open and close these blocks as a teacher by just turning on or off the eyeball. So if I want them to see something, I just make sure that the eye is on. If there's something I don't want them to see, Big Brother's watching, it's off. If there's a certain topic that I want them to focus on, because that's what we're currently studying, which I haven't done yet, but I should do for this next section, I'll turn on the light bulb. And then they'll see the green bars around the one that we're working. Okay. I haven't used Dropbox. I know Ed uses this for student uploads of files. I haven't really done that. I've never had students upload anything, but there is a Dropbox repository now in Moodle where kids can access stuff via their Dropboxes, which is huge. What Ed does, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ed, what you would do is something like, in Chapter 1 practice, if I wanted to add a link to where kids could upload stuff, I would just go down here to the Add an Activity or Resource. And this is how we create the individual things. And then here's the list of stuff you can do. I almost exclusively use quizzes, or I just upload files, like PowerPoint files. Although I do actually do some, and I use web page. Like when I link to my YouTube videos, I just create well, up at the top there, remember where it said lecture videos? If they click on that, it's a web page, and then on that web page, I've got links to the individual YouTube videos. And that's, I can show you how to do that too. It's not hard to do. But I think what Ed does, when you say you use this, upload a single file, and then if I click on that, this will just kind of show you how you add these things. What's the name of the assignment? So this is sample upload.
You gotta put a description in there.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's right. That's a new thing too.
I didn't know where it shows up.
You bet. It doesn't really show up, I don't think, unless you tell it to. And then here's where you can control when it's available, if that's enabled. Like if I disable these, then it's just it's just always on there. But I can make it go away. And if I put something up here, a date, it shows up in that calendar. It'll say, if it's for a test or an assignment, it'll say assignment closes, and then it'll give the date and the time, so they know when it's going away. Then you can add, you know, there's a bunch of information here about what the grade is going to be, what category does it go in the grade book. Like I've got assessments and practice and that kind of stuff. I'm just not going to mess with all this stuff. Maximum size, you can change that up to 6 megabytes.
What if can you scroll back up to the,
Sure.
when it's available? I want it on the calendar. It's got it's actually due, but I want to leave it available.
Okay, then you wouldn't use this. This is when it actually is going to go away for students. What I do instead then, and remind me about this when we go back to the calendar view,
Okay. Calendar.
you can add an item on the
Okay.
calendar.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I think this is, you know, all pretty standard. I could go through and change some. And here's the restricted access piece. If I want to attach a condition, it can be they have to have a certain grade on a certain assignment right here before they can access this too. And I haven't even done that yet, but I know that's where you do it. If I go save and display, then there it is. And so now they have the ability to upload a file. That's right. I don't have to do anything else, right? Then if I'm a student and I go to this, so student view. And if they go down to this sample upload, there it goes. They can just hit upload a file and we'll take them to, they'll have to navigate to it on their desktop and upload it, and there it is. They turned it in.
And I go in and there's a place for me to grade it, and I can put the grade on there and then a comment if I want to.
Yeah. Okay, so go back to that. I better delete that though before some students on there wonders what's that all about.
What did I miss?
Yeah.
Because you know they're all doing their homework, right?
Yeah. Well, I can see the online users and there's nobody. There's just me right now.
Kim was here, I was gonna say, Joanna.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll delete that. Okay, so now what?
We need to take a break.
We take a break.
Let's take a break. Good plan. Oh, yeah, break.
That would be good.
Yeah. I'll pause this.
Were you recording still?
No, I turned it off. Now it is. Yeah. Yeah, I turned it off. I was careful. I was careful.
Hey.
Between sessions. So if I go down to let's say I go to order of operations, and I want to see how my group is doing. Look at the attempts right here. So I can go to attempts, click on that, or along the side with Moodle 2. This is new, Tina. You wouldn't have seen this. Along the side, it's going to give you this navigation tree, which is really handy. So it tells us we're under algebra review, practice, block, and then here are all the different assignments. I can actually access these just from the side now without having to go back to the page. And then within the order of operations practice, if I click on, oh dang, did I just do that? Let's try this. Yeah, if I click on this, I can directly go to grades. I can go to statistics, and I haven't enabled this, but evidently in Moodle 2 there is this whole built-in capacity now for Moodle to generate really cool statistics about student usage by group, by assignment, by class, or by student, that it does without you doing anything. If you click on statistics, it just compiles those. The first time you run it, it bogs things down a bit, I guess, and so that's why I haven't done it, but we're going to try that. Manual grading, if you wanted to grade something manually. And what I typically do, just get this out there, I won't show you in more detail. But Glenn asked a question earlier about what do you do if you want to have an assignment that has a due date, but that you want to keep open, which is what I do. I publish the due date. I go to the calendar, and it says add an event, and then you just follow instructions. Click on it, you put the date on there. What do you want to call the title? Do you want to have a description that students see? I usually just have a title, and that's enough. 1.4 assignment due by midnight for full credit, for example, is what I say. My due dates are at midnight.
But now, when you do that, Eric, can students, if it's still available, can they put in answers after?
Yes, they can, and here's how I deal with that. I always add on my assignments, I have one question that I add that's the same one that just comes from the top heading on that category tree, from the default heading, which is on-time credit. And there, it gives the same message. It says you can turn this in for full credit. You have to submit this assignment on time for full credit, and then you can have a percentage. So what I do is like I do 80% for the next week. They can turn it in. And so it says if you turn it in late, you get a maximum of 80% credit. And then on the day that it's due, when I come in the morning, this is a little bit time consuming, but it works pretty well. If I go to that assignment, I always have, that's a manually graded question. If I go manual grading, it just gives me a list of all the students that have turned that in.
And you go through.
And you just go through, and if you're working in, you don't want to be an Explorer, but I found that if you're in Chrome, Google Chrome, or Firefox, you can sit there, you can go tab, tab, and then you, if it's whatever 20% of that assignment ends up being, say it's 36 points, I just go 36, tab, tab, 36, tab, tab, 36, and in about 30 seconds, I've added that on-time credit for all the students. And so their scores pop up to 100%. I then move that assignment from the pending category, which was not contributing to grades. I go to the grade book and move it up to the whatever category it's going to be in, practice versus assessment. And now it's live, but anybody that works on it from that point forward can only get up to 80%. That's how I've dealt with that.
I know, I know, just from looking at Madison's assignment, I was like, why is it 80%? Because I did it on time, Mom. But, you know, he hasn't given me the extra points. And when everybody's done, then he'll give it to me.
Yeah, and when it goes up to the, right, exactly, when it goes up to the active category, then for sure you know that that's been done.
Right.
And if it's in the active category and it's 80%, then it really is 80%. You know, either it's late or they just missed 20%. So, does that make sense?
Yeah, parts of it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to see.
Yeah. And that's, once again, that's something when we go to the lab, that's a little more involved. Oh, I'm just going to show you. Yeah, we're going back to, so we're at attempts. And now if I go over to, if I click on attempts, see, it gives me a full list of all the people that have done this. So here's where I can group this any way I want to. At the top, for my visible groups, I can choose all participants for everybody, or I can choose all my sections or just one of my classes. Let's say I just go to period 6. Then, now, this is an assignment where there was kind of a snafu where we ended up having to, at the beginning of the year, I used some new question types that weren't supported well, and so I had to replace the assignment. And so most students have done this. There are only a couple. I need to probably pick a different one. Let me go down to multiplying polynomials. See, look, it's 258 attempts total. And so if I choose all attempts, I'm going to get a big list. But I'm just going to go to my period 6. And then I get this list of, let's get rid of this thing. Then I get this list of how my students did on this attempt. And here's each question. See, I can scroll over here and I can see at the very bottom, I can go down to the and see how they do. Well, 8.93, 8.93, those are good. Those are good. Is there a low one somewhere? Well, maybe there was one that showed up as like a 4.32 or something. So I just make them all have 10 points. And then it scales them because there's more than 10 questions. It scales them down to whatever, 8.93 is the best score you can get. If there was one that showed up as like a 4.5 and a 3.2, some questions where the class average was that low, I would know immediately, we're having troubles. So I could go up to one of these questions here and open up another window with an example of that question. Take a snapshot of that from within Active Inspire, which is where I am, right? All I have to do is just go to the little camera icon, whoops, go to the little camera icon, drag it over there, take a snapshot, clipboard, go to, here, let me do it. Rather than say, let me actually do this so you can see this. Probably make this a little, I would make this bigger too. And then I would just go like this, take a snapshot, go up here and grab this guy, clipboard, go to there, hit paste. Normally I right click on mine. Yours isn't set up to do that for it, but I would just right click paste.
You just go in settings to set that up?
Probably, yeah. I can't remember how I did. It's been a long time ago. I think that's how you do it. And I paste, and there it is. Now I've got it. Now I'm ready to talk about this as a class. I can make this bigger if I want to. There's one we're all in trouble with. Let's look at this example. So we go through
It
it.
should right click. It should click on that.
It's not doing it. Because normally if I right click, it would say paste. It gives me all the right click options.
No, the answer was, I just saw negative X, then whatever it was. If they would plug in negative 1X, would they get it wrong on their response?
It depends how you set it up.
Yeah.
Depends how you set it up. I mean, you have to, I don't want them to do that, so I say no.
Right.
But you could make it so they do.
We shamed them into putting 1 in front of the X in 8th grade,
That's what I did.
so they did mark it wrong in 8th grade. They haven't figured it. No,
Yeah.
we just say, hey, when you get to high school, this is how you're gonna answer that.
Yeah.
Now, I'll accept it as a 1X, but we gotta work out of that
Yeah.
We got 9 months to get rid of that.
Well, and there's the capacity in Moodle when you build these questions. Like with the professional stuff I'm doing, that I'm building questions kind of outside of my school stuff. I mean, I spend a great deal of time writing questions that have good feedback. I mean, if they do something wrong like that, it would say, okay, you get partial credit because, but you shouldn't include a 1 as a coefficient. It'll tell them that. I don't have time to do that for those, but you can. You can go in and add to the questions, and it'll give them specific feedback based on what their response is. I just tell them.
Yeah, if you just tell them right straight up
Yeah,
front, they
it's-
don't do it, and then when they can't get it right, and they don't, you know, if it was 5x minus 6x, then, and they put in negative 1x, I mean, it's very easy to go over. And after the first chapter, the second chapter gets really easy.
Yeah.
They get in a routine of how to answer the question.
Well, and it's nice because what you can do is pull up quizzes in class too, and go through them and just say, okay, so here's and literally input them with a group, and just say, okay, you put them in little groups. Okay, what are we gonna do with this, you guys? And then they'll tell you, and then put it in and get the red X and say, well, what'd they do wrong? You know,
So
what's,
if I have 5x plus 2, and they put 2 plus 5x,
well,
what
that
about it wrong?
normally I would set that to be fine, but if you're in certain sections of the book, you wouldn't want them to do it that way.
Right, you want it in
If you
descending
want it to be in
order.
standard form, then that would be wrong, and you talk about why it's wrong. But I have that control when I write the questions to say what's allowed and what's not allowed.
And it is, like, when I start a new chapter, I pull up the web page on my board, and I show them what the questions are gonna look like. You know, because when I pull up, and I do it under my own name, so that they're gonna get different questions, but then we go through in class what is expected and how, like, when you get to square roots, you know how you entered SQRT? So when we get to that point, I show it just like that, and then we go through how do we enter it into the computer, so that when I get to the lab, I don't have 38 hands
Well,
raised.
and there's literally like 2 things that they've got to know that are different than what they expect. I mean, it's like square root is SQRT, but otherwise, I mean, if they want to do a power, it's the caret, which is just how they do it on a calculator. You know,
Right.
it's very, very similar to what they would be doing on a graphing calculator. And then here's the other thing that's kind of cool about this. If I want to look at, so when I pull down this quiz view, I get this great feedback that is, you know, like I say, I mean, it's like PLC in 10 seconds. I mean, there it is. I can compare this, and what it's showing me right now is it's showing me my performance versus the overall performance of all groups combined. And so if I find an assignment where I'm really low in this period, then I know something's going on. I mean, if my class average is a 65 and as a group it's 80%, something's going on with that group. You know, what happened there? Either there's something that somebody else is doing that how'd you do that? You know, my guys are struggling, or they missed a day on that. You know, something's happening there though that I've got to deal with, and I know right away that it's that way. You know, that there's an issue that I must address as a teacher. Maybe it's a low group, and I've learned to expect that. You know, but at least it's drawn to my attention. If I want to look at an individual kid's stuff, like let's say that somebody comes in to see me here, we all have these same kids. I suppose it's okay if I pull one up, right? If I pull up, you know, Kendra comes in to see me, and she's got questions on an assignment, I can just go review the attempt, and I see everything she's done. Come on, maybe. There it goes. I see everything she's done. I see all the attempts she's made on every problem. We can go back and see, well, you had trouble with, and when it's graded, she hasn't turned this one in yet, but when it's graded, they'll be green if they're right and red if they're wrong. We can just focus on the ones, just go to the ones that she missed and go through them. It's a great thing to do with tests before they do a retake. When I get kids into TA, we just pull them up and, okay, let's look at these, and some of them are stupid mistakes that aren't an issue, but some of them aren't. Some of them, we need to reteach this stuff.
And one of the other little beauties of it is, let's say that there was something that Eric and I didn't agree on that we were grading, or maybe not necessarily that, well. Did
somebody bring this for me?
Yes,
Oh,
Laura
thank
did.
you.
Laura did.
Oh,
Miltenberg.
that's so nice.
There was like one question last year on an Algebra 2 test that I didn't teach it. And it was on the test. So what I did is I'm able to manually go in and change the grades. Did you go through that?
No, I haven't, but you can. You can go in. I can override the grades manually on
Right,
any of that.
and the same thing, like, let's say that I deemed 1X was acceptable and he didn't deem it to be acceptable, you can go in and change the grade for that problem. You can look at their responses, just like what he pulled up, and if you decide you wanna take 1X and you see that they had it, but they got it wrong, then you can change the grade on that, because it records everything that
But you
they
have
do.
to open it up and go look at it.
Yeah,
Well-
yeah, because I don't
No
just take it
problem.
I just don't take it for granted. When, especially on a test, if they say, hey, I got that one right and all I did was enter it in wrong, we can go to that exact question, pull it up, and I can see, and then it's like proof.
Or even if a
Like-
kid does this, I mean, if they say, oh my gosh, I did this and I hit plus instead of minus, and you can look on here and say, oh yeah, you did, I see what you did.
Yep,
That's no big deal, I'll give you credit for it.
right,
Yeah, it happens
exactly.
sometimes, you get a
Yeah.
record of everything they've input. Now, if there's an issue that comes up where either the question is wrong, which happens, not so much anymore because we've had it for a few years, it's pretty rare that you see questions that are wrong, but they're there.
Mhm.
Or you see one that responds, maybe you don't want it, you decided after the fact that I don't want to penalize the kids for that particular mistake. I can go change the question, edit the question, and all I have to do, this is so cool, if I go to the, if I go back to the quiz view, once I've changed the question, I can go regrade. I can regrade the whole thing, or if there's certain students, I push regrade, and not only does it change the grades on that quiz, it propagates through every quiz that's ever been given that involved that question, and it changes the grades. Which is why if you're using this grade book instead, it's so much more efficient, because even other grades would then be affected by that.
Yeah, it will.
I mean, you're
will
guaranteed,
adjust it.
it really does do what we want to do with a district-wide grade book. It really is responsive to any little change that needs to be made, and it's instantaneous, and it's in real time. And so, at some point in the future, the schools that are doing this that's why they really like it, like the grade book. If you take the time to build in the parent access stuff too. So, I mean, that's ways down the road, I think, but anyway. So, that's the quiz view. And like I say, I think that is just, having that access and being able to pull this thing up. And I will do this last minute. Between classes, I'll pull this up if I want to decide what I'm going to talk about. And that's all I do is look at the bottom and see which areas we're having trouble with. And I got it. I'll go through those in class. The first thing we do is, I've identified the areas where as a group we're struggling. These 3 questions address that. Before we even start with anything new, that's what we do. So
What's the chart?
Oh, and then it makes the chart too. Look at the chart. This is really cool. I didn't even show you that. It'll show you as a group, this is your breakdown of how they did on that assignment. How many people are in each range. And you can set it up so it'll even show you that within, as a comparison to the group, to the all participants. It'll give you a green one for yours and a red one for all participants. And you can see visually how it stacks up. But not that that's as important. I think this is kind of cool though, to be able to look at this thing and see, if there's a lot of people bunched up down here, that's a pretty obvious visual indicator that we got to cover this some more. Yeah, yeah. So, what else?
Oh, and, hey, Eric, can
Yeah.
I bunch in?
Yeah.
A person might think when you're doing this, it's just number answers that like he's calling for, but it's not the case. I mean, sometimes the questions call for, a sentence, and Eric builds them so that it's the computer, I think, is looking for keywords
Yeah.
in their sentence.
And like we even do proofs in geometry that way.
Right, so it's not just a single number answer sometimes that the computer is looking for. Sometimes it is more detailed.
Or even an algebraic expression answer. It might be something like they've got to know that this is the, whatever. I mean, if we're doing a proof in geometry, they've got to be able to identify the steps in a way where, I mean, it's pretty easy to make it catch those keywords on proofs too. Now, you tell me when we want to should I go through how to create a quiz? Just show you the steps and how to pull questions into a quiz, how to write questions, or we want to just go set up course rooms? You tell me where we go from here.
I'd like to see how to, it's probably pretty simple, that I just haven't done, is do the calendar.
Oh, okay, calendar.
Put
Yeah,
something on a calendar.
that's good. You bet. There we go. Okay, so if we go back to geometry, if I want to add something to the calendar, all I do, there we go. All I do is go up to the calendar and I click on the month. I think I maybe even could just click on the edit button, but I always just do it this way. And then put in new event.
Did you tell him to turn the editing on?
Oh,
Did
no,
you
I don't
tell
think I
that
did. That's important. Yeah, when you go in as a teacher and you want to have access to this stuff, up at the top you want to turn editing on. When we get out of this, I'll show you what the difference is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right when you get in,
Yeah.
push the button so you
Yeah.
can do what you need to do.
And then event title, whatever you want to call it. For me, it would be 1.4 assignment due by midnight for full credit, or in-class exam, or something like that. And then you just go down to this panel right here, where you're going to put in the time, the date that it shows up, the time. You can even put the time. Like for me, I put in 23:59 for midnight, and if they highlight over that, it tells them what time it's due also. Does that make sense? So name it. You can put a description if you want to. You put in the date, and if you click this, it actually gives you a calendar. You can, if I want to put something in for October 25th, then I click on that. It turns it to 25th. Go to the hour, minute.
And then the duration is just how it'll,
I put mine up without duration typically, so the calendar just always stays on the calendar. You can make them disappear too, and then just save changes and it's there. Okay. And I've never even used this, but you can repeat this event if it's something you do once a week, or you can repeat it so it pops in every Thursday or something too. So.
And this is all Apple compatible, I mean.
Yes.
And you're physically taking kids into a lab, but has anybody done anything where you just stay in your classroom and do something on a mobile device?
My classes are so enormous this year. I mean, I've got, I think, 2 of them that are 40, that there is not a lab that
Right.
handles them. And so what we'll do beforehand is I'll just kind of, people use their smartphones, literally. I mean, that's how they access it sometimes.
Well, then I just know taking a bunch of 13-year-olds down to a computer lab would be a waste. I mean, that transition, for a younger kid, that transition, but we were able to stay in the classroom.
And use
do
tablets,
all
yeah.
this.
Well, I've
It would
got
be great.
increasingly kids that bring tablets. Now,
Perfect.
and they prefer to use the tablet. And they just, even if we
Well,
go
I
to
mean,
the
it
lab.
would be a
they just-
reason to come
Oh,
up
yeah,
with a
yeah,
classroom set
Yeah.
Oh,
of
goodness.
tablets, that you could share, and then build your,
Well, and
sets.
well, sure. And the advantage of that would be if you have the classroom with your smartboard and all your resources, and you, I mean, to me, I much prefer to do a short shot of one skill, and then you could easily say, okay, now everybody, I want you to go to the link that's got the skills practice with 2 or 3 problems on there. Everybody go to it and do it, and then I can actually see what they're doing, even if I sit at my desk, or I wouldn't do it up here, but I'd go to my desk if I want to, and
Or
just
on
have a
your
screen up
iPad.
there. Or I can walk around with my phone or my iPad. But if I want to be able to look at what they're doing before I go out and identify groups that I want to go to, I can just look at them right there, see what they're doing in real time. And then we know I get immediate feedback based on when they hit submit, we know how we did as a group. I just go into that quiz view. So yeah, it would be ideal to have. The lab is really not the best way to do this. It would be much better to be able to do this all within one classroom. I agree. We just don't have those tablets available at this point. But in the future, I mean, realistically,
within the
that's,
next 5 years, I mean. That's
my wife's a first-year teacher in Hermiston, and she's already got a full classroom set of iPads, and it's, I mean, that's the way they're rolling. I mean, her whole department's gonna be doing that pretty soon. And I know they get more money, but I think that's in the future. That's every school's gonna move in that direction. Why wouldn't you? The textbooks are half as expensive. You get updates to the textbooks every year. You buy one piece of hardware, and all the textbooks are cheaper. I mean, it's definitely the direction it's going. All right, how do you, maybe the last thing I'll show you is how you would actually build an assignment if you wanted to. And then we'll go down to the lab for the rest of the day, I think, and just work on this stuff. So if I go to build, I'll just go into algebra review practice. How about if I want to add an activity or a resource, let's add a quiz. And add. And then it takes me here. So I name it. Tell me when I'm supposed to stop. And then here's where I can set all the criteria about how this thing works. I can have it open on a certain date. I can build in advance and have it only open when we get to a certain date, and then it shows up for the students and it shows up on the calendar. I can have it closed down at a certain time. I have some options here. I'm gonna make this a little smaller. This is really cool, something they've added for Moodle 2. This is super cool. I can go through and set this up to open attempts are submitted automatically when the assignments due, which is huge. Like Jess, I know if you probably fought this in the past. If something's due and you close it up, then all the students who have done work but not submitted it, it's a pain to deal with that. This will automatically submit the stuff for the students when you hit that due date, which is huge.
What they've done so far.
Yeah, what they've done so far is in there, yep. I really like that. You can set a submission grace period too if you want to. I don't really do that, but you can. The grade category you would choose, like I would always start up by putting them in the pending assignments category, so they're not contributing to the grade, but when students look at their online grades, that's where they'll see them. The day that they're due, I'll go in and add the on-time credit and just move them up to the appropriate category, which I don't even have to do in here. I can do that from within the gradebook feature, which I don't know if I'll get into as a group.
Is that a category you defined, or is that?
Yeah, I defined these, yes, I defined all these, yeah.
So all those, that whole drop down?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And I've just got some categories that are like libraries and stuff that I'm not using first semester that's there for second semester, just so you know what I mean, so they're all available when I want them. You can have, now the layout, I can have the questions show up as I want them to on the screen, so I can set up which questions I want on which page of the assignment, or I can have them shuffled randomly, like on a test I always do that. So they're randomly shuffled, and then I can have how many questions per page. On a test I would make it every question is a new page. Navigation method, free means they can move around as they will, but this is another new feature in Moodle 2. If I go to sequential, this is an oak style deal, where they can go in and they can't go forward or backward. They can only do the question that they're on, which makes it okay for me to open up an attempt. If they don't finish, they can return to an attempt. I'm fine with it. In the past, I never let them do that because they could have seen the other questions and it wasn't secure anymore. But now they can't. They can't see the other questions and they can't return to questions that they've already worked on.
Right, so if they accidentally hit submit, or that they're done on that question, they can't go back.
Well, you can manually go in and fix it. It's kind of a pain, but they have to be trained. I've given them the first test. I said I'll do it, but after that, you're on your own. If you make that mistake, you have to just redo the test.
Right.
I'm not going to deal with it. But it's so that's and they're getting some practice with it now.
Yes,
It's not happening as much anymore. So that's kind of cool for tests that wasn't there before. Do you want to shuffle within questions if you have multiple choice stuff? I always have yes. How the questions behave. You have a whole bunch of choices here. I almost exclusively use adaptive mode, which means that if a student enters something and the question is either incorrect, partially correct, or correct, it will tell them that, and it will give them any specific feedback that I programmed into the question, which I haven't done very much of, frankly, for the school stuff. You can do adaptive mode with no penalties, which is what I do for the homeworks. So they can go in and continually work on them until they input a right answer for full credit. Or on the tests, I'll either use adaptive mode with penalties, which means they can do something for a partial credit if I set the question up that way. Now I can override that. If I make the penalty factor 1 on a question, then if they miss it once, they lose all the credit. Or you could do something like deferred feedback, where if you wanted to, and they don't see any feedback until after they've submitted the test. But you have absolute control over that stuff before when you're making the assignment. Down here, this controls, and this is getting a little more specific here, and I don't know if we want to spend a lot of time on this. I'm sure this is not bordering on, but well over the threshold of information overload. But you can go down here and check what's the specific kind of feedback that you want them to see when. You can have them during the attempt of a given question. You can control the feedback immediately after they've attempted the question. Later on, like when they return, if the quiz is still open, like when they come back to it for another session, or after the quiz has officially closed, what feedback you want them to see. I don't think all this stuff is, I just kind of do one thing always, but you have an amazing amount of control over what the kids actually get to see based on their input. and then I usually skip through. Oh, and here's where, if you want to put a password in, you know, we can, and you can unmask it so you can actually see that you're typing the right thing. Or like what Wendy and I do. If we always change the passwords around, so when we give a test, we just go down and unmask it and see what the current password is, so we can tell the kids. And here's where I've got the, I always input a PSD specific network address that only allows work from within a district computer on tests only. And that's where you would enter that. And I can show you what, it's always the same. I can show you what it is, and that's where you put that in. And then you can have overall feedback, and I haven't even gotten around to doing this, but if they're between, if they get an A, you can have some feedback that gives them, yay, fantastic, or whenever they submit an assignment, they'll get that additional feedback. And then all you have to do to make this thing work is save and return to course, or I hit save and display, and here's where you actually add the questions. So if I hit, can you do it? Yeah. If I hit save and display, now I've got this new assignment, and no questions have been added yet. So I can edit the quiz and add questions. This is going to be a little bit more advanced, and one of the things I've got to do, if more people are going to use this, is I've got to create a more organized set of math questions for people to draw on, so that when people add questions, it makes sense where they put them if they want to use my questions, which of course they're welcome to do. They know where to find them. If I go through this here, if I select a category, see I've got this huge list of questions. I mean, these are all the categories of questions I've created just for geometry. And you can go through and find the ones that you want based on whatever section we're doing. Like right now, we're doing chapter 1, yeah, so and it was broken up by the topics, points, lines, and planes. If you want to find a question from that, we'll go to one of these categories. If I want to find, for example, say I want to add a question on whether a point is collinear or not. I'll just click on that, and it's going to give me all these questions I can draw from. If I want to see what they are, I can click the magnifying glass, and a question will pop up. Okay, so F and H are collinear with point what? And then they've got to enter point, they'd enter a G to get credit for that. If I like those questions, I can either pull specific ones out, or I could say, even better, I could say, let's randomly from that list, I'm going to add 2 questions randomly. So everyone's getting different questions. See how that works? And then I'll go down, I can pick a different category for more stuff. The quiz view that it gives you then, it gives you a summary of what you've done. You can make these questions worth as many points as you want. I make them all worth 10 points. But you can make them worth whatever you want them to be worth. You can control the maximum grade. I always make it 100. So it's all based on a percentage basis. They can look at it and always identify their grade as a percentage grade. That's about it. That's about it. I can move stuff around if I go to ordering and paging. It tells me what they are by page. Now I've got 2 separate pages, but maybe I don't like that. I'm going to repaginate this and have every 2 questions. So those will both be grouped on a single page. I can move them around freely as I want to if I want to change the order. It's pretty almost self-explanatory once you start to do it a little bit. It really is. If I want to look at all the questions, if I want to make a question, or look at the questions that are available, if I go down to question bank, or I could go, for example, the categories, and I can see the tree of the question categories for the whole course. And I've got some, these are within geometry, and this is starting to get a little complicated, but those are within geometry. If I scoot down here, I've even got some questions in different categories that are available, maybe. Well, I must have skipped it. No, I don't think so. Well, anyway, I can have these set up so they're only available within the geometry course, or they're available from within all the algebra courses can draw on these questions. I can control that. So if you're building an Algebra 1 class, you don't need to see the geometry stuff, but there's a host of algebra things that you could draw from that would be different. And this would never show up in your class, if that makes sense. And there's, right now there is a ton of stuff out there, and my goal is to clean this up a little bit so it makes more sense and just like by category instead of, some of it's gonna be by, if you look down here, I think some of it's like by section in the book. I'd rather change those, but I always say, what's the geometry category? But I think I've got something like 60,000 questions on there now. So I mean, there's a bank that's already essentially done that everybody can use if they want to. It's available. And you can use mine. Use my assignments if you want. That's fine. I've built, like in Algebra 1, I've built a bunch of assignments that are already done. Tweak them if you want to, but they're there.
Physically type those in.
Yeah, it's been.
Okay, let's say, for example, I were to use that and use it as a homework, and I've already got it typed up on a document. Can I just ship it in there?
Yes, you can. Well, for example, I'll tell you what I did with that last question we were looking at, like this collinear points.
Right to it.
Yes, what I do, that's a good question. To build this question, and this is a pretty cool looking question with the graphics. I didn't make those. What I did is I took the PDFs that come with our textbook, opened up the PDF view from within Active Inspire, took a snapshot, and then added it, add the clipboard, pull it up in Paint, save it as a JPEG, and there it is. I can pull it into that question easily. And then it's there. And then if I want to make other questions like that, instead of I go to that question and just copy at the bottom, copy to a new question, and it keeps all that stuff the same, I can just change the individual letters around a little bit. So I can very rapidly use all the same graphics and stuff and make it a number of questions. I mean, 10 minutes I can have 30 questions built on this. So
like Glenn's saying, just all of your stuff is on a Word document and you just got text.
Yeah.
I take that text off my Word
right,
document.
and I think the easiest way to do it is, instead of actually trying to upload and download the Word document, is to open it up on here, on this thing, and then just use that deal. And just take a picture of it.
But we don't all have
I don't have that.
Promethean boards.
No, but you don't have to have a Promethean board to use the Promethean software. Like at home, I don't have a Promethean board, but I use my Promethean software to do this stuff at home when I'm building questions. You don't even need the board.
So you just
Because
use
as a
your mouse.
district, we all have the right to use the software.
That's just a wireless mouse, so you just,
Well, see, I'm trying to think, there's so much here, I'm trying to think, what is one thing that I can apply? I could put all of my assignments online in the event that a kid is absent.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That they could access
Yeah.
at home,
Mhm.
on such and such date, this is what we did.
Oh, sure.
I could use Moodle in that sense,
Yeah,
right?
and that would be nothing more than just saving your document as a PDF and uploading the PDF.
Right.
Yep. Yeah.
Instead of me running across the hall, print one off, run back across.
Well, here's the other
You know
thing
what
you
I
can do too, that we've initially, it was just, I couldn't get all the questions in. I mean, right now, we're pretty much we don't even use the textbooks anymore. The questions, we can build better questions, more interactive questions without the textbook. But initially, for the homework assignments, what I would say is, for the questions I would build, at the top it would just say section 1.4, number 27, and there's an answer blank where they enter their answer. That's it. All you have to do is put the answer in there. And then they got the textbook here and they try it in Moodle and, oh, I got it wrong, or I got it right. But then you don't have to put anything in. You're still using the worksheet or whatever the materials are from before. And just put see what I'm saying?
And through Moodle, okay, I asked this question previously. Let's say I put my homework on there, and could I make the questions unique so everybody's homework is not the same question, right?
Yeah. Oh,
I
yeah.
could do
Yeah,
that.
you can. Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Now.
That's kind of like the quiz question. Everybody's question is unique to whatever their screen is.
Right. Now, once again, there's the two ways to do that. If I get out of here, remember, if I'm building this thing, if I have a category of questions, like right now I'm under the category of and look how this is structured. You can have different parents and children of each. Like I start off with chapter 1, points, lines, and planes, and then within that category, we can do, I'm just pulling these from the worksheet. So I've got the worksheet, 1.2, the first block of questions, et cetera, et cetera. And within those, I've got different kinds of things I can do. And so when I'm building a test then, what's cool about this is, I could go up, if I want to pull a random one from all that stuff, I could go to points, lines, and planes. And that includes all the questions from points, lines, and planes, and add a random question, and it's pulling one in from that whole entire group of, however many, 200 problems or something.
See, that's the thing though, is that you have to have a lot of questions in there in order for there to be random selection of questions.
Right.
You only
And
have 4
that's-
questions in there, random selection of questions is not going to help you.
No, but I'll argue this. I'll say that even if you only had 4 questions, on a test, if you set it up so they're only seeing one page, randomly, one page per question, the odds of you having, maybe every once in a while, your
A
question's
different
gonna line up with
combination
your
of those
neighbors.
4 questions
Yeah.
it could get. and
What are the
that's-
odds you're gonna be on the same page they are and have the same question?
I think
One
that,
chance of 30.
Yeah.
I think that the thing that's really hard about this whole thing is that none of us have iPads for our
You're right.
classrooms.
You're
And we're
right.
all fighting, assuming that, let's say even just
Yes.
our staff that's in this room at the high school, one did Moodle and we did it exclusively, kind of like you do, we would never get into the lab.
No, I know, and so, you know, obviously, from a selfish point of view, you know, the fewer people that do it, the better, but I think, I mean, I
See what
believe
I'm
in
saying,
this,
though?
yeah, I
I
do.
think it's a good idea too, I'm just thinking, okay, when would my kids ever be able to get in there?
And I guess, I don't have an answer for that, but I think that the way that we're gonna push this issue is by people starting to use it and saying, look at this great stuff we've got, we can't even use it because we don't have the facilities. Now,
We work
get us
with
the
the district,
facilities.
that's how we're gonna facilitate the
Yeah,
change. We
yeah.
can't wait for it
For
to
them
come
to-
top down. It's gotta come from us, and look, we're gonna have to, there's gonna be that transition year or two where it's gonna be uphill for us.
Yeah.
Because,
Sure.
but eventually, it's
Well, and I
gonna-
recognize
they're
it's gonna
spend
change the
money.
way I do business, because it's gonna clog up the labs a little bit, but I think this is good enough, and I think it's valuable enough as a district to be doing this stuff that I'm fine with that. I mean, I think that, and you can do it at home, you don't necessarily even have to do it in the classroom.
It would just be homework,
It could just be homework, and you could still pull up the examples in class and do those and say,
with the
you know,
exception that, you know, a lot of us don't have a smartboard.
you know, that's true,
Oh.
but that's something that I think would just, I can't imagine doing business without a smartphone anymore. I can't even imagine it. It would just, it's,
Yeah, see, that's the thing, is I'm sitting here and thinking, okay, well, that's fine, but I would not be able to, I mean, I guess my computer's on my desk and I can show it.
Do you have a wall that you can project
Yeah,
stuff on? Cause you
yeah.
can get a slate and use you don't need the board, you just need the program and, you know, a mouse
Yeah.
or a wireless. And now the iPads now have some sort of a reflection type program where it's essentially your slate right there and you don't have to use
yeah.
one of those. So you
Yeah,
don't
what's-
need a board necessarily.
True.
Moodle is-
True, but ideally, it's nice. And I think that, you know, really, I mean, that seems like that's just a tool of the trade now. That,
It does, I mean, you know, even as my own children,
Mhm.
everybody has a smartboard, you know, and as they come up to high school, there are, what, 6 people or 8 people who have smartboards, the rest of us don't have them.
Well, and if you were doing this, I mean, to me, that's, you gotta be able to say, well, look, I have to have one. This is, I mean, everything I do now, I'm moving forward, I'm advancing my curriculum in a way that just is gonna require me to have one, so.
Just tie it into the
Get-
Common
get me
Core
one.
standards. I mean,
Yeah.
just phrase it that I'm doing higher level stuff here,
Well,
higher level.
And here's a pretty easy sell on this too. If
Just
you look at the,
Alt school, I don't have one
Right,
in
see,
my
because
class.
Alt School has smartboards because they had extra money they had to spend.
yeah,
Math has them, Sonia has one, and so does Patty. That's it.
I think they've come down in price too. I mean, they're not,
I don't have one at the high school.
I think this is a pretty good selling point. If you say that, you know, recognize, just remind people that the Smarter Balanced Assessment, there's a 1, maybe a 2-week window, or a window for 1 or 2 attempts on this. It is all done online, completely done online. Students that have used an interactive online environment like this are gonna have a decided advantage over students that don't. And it's gonna make our district look a heck of a lot better as a
Well,
whole.
Not
That's-
only that, but like, just let's say like a science question, I mean, there used to be like, everybody's got the, you know, potential energy, kinetic energy, here's the roller coaster, A, B, C, D, pick the place where it has the most potential energy.
Mhm.
And the questions aren't like that, here's the roller coaster, you put an X,
Mhm.
you know, they're interactive.
Right.
You know, or you draw a right triangle, or
Mhm.
whatever, you know, it's not like go over 20, here's A, B, C, you have a 25% chance, good luck, blindly pick whatever you,
Yeah.
you know. So they are having to be interactive in their choices on
Mhm.
those tests, and that's not anything that we do, we don't do it that, at least anywhere in science, because we don't have the technology to be able to do it.
Yeah. I mean, like I say, I think this is, if you build it, they will come kind of thing. You know, I mean, if people start using this, I don't think that as a district we have any choice but to start to, you know, to
I
provide
think-
appropriate resources for that.
I got pads, I got a bunch of these cut up with
Yeah.
markers. They
Yeah.
got them.
I do too, I have 35
So do I.
whiteboards to hold up.
You have 40 kids, though.
Yeah, exactly. So may step
The
right
question
up.
is, do you have 32
Well, and
partners?
there's,
I don't.
you know, there's another issue. I mean, if we've got 40 kids in our classes, how are you gonna give feedback to 40 kids? Here's how you're gonna give feedback to 40 kids.
And they get feedback right away.
Yeah, you know, really, I mean, you can deal with, it's much more scalable than a traditional approach. And if you look at, community colleges are really good about this. Community colleges publish their statistics. If you look every year for the last 5 years, if you look at what style of classroom instruction has been the most not infective, maybe that too, effective, if you compare 3 categories, traditional, straight online, or hybrid, which is what we would all be doing, which is in the classroom and online, by far the most effective, not even close, is hybrid. And the second most effective is actually online. It's close between but that's, I mean, it tells you something about if we really want to be effective, then at some level, this is something we got to be doing. The kids that go to college now, I mean, I think this was addressed, I liked what she said in that first session in the room in there, that the big disadvantage kids coming from Pendleton have is that sometimes when they go to college where everything is online, everything. You take your laptop to class and they're pushing stuff out to you in real time, and it's, you know, they've never done that before in some cases, and it's putting them at a decided disadvantage in college. And we know what the rate of retention of freshman college students is. It's not high. And it's, you know, that might be the straw that breaks the camel's back. I mean, this is stuff that really, these are skills, aside from the curriculum we're teaching, these are just skills that kids need to have when they go to college if they want to be successful, especially if they're borderline. I mean, you know, if we cohesively as a group just kind of say, these are the reasons we need this stuff, I got to believe we're going to get some of it. That might be naive, maybe.
You're not. I think there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
But don't you also feel like Tom would be receptive to that?
Tom would be very receptive, I think.
Because he's a very technology type
I think he is too. I think he needs an excuse to push that, but I think he would be very receptive to that. I do. Yeah.
We've had teachers raise half the funds through some grant or something, and then Matt's matched that with something from Sunridge, and that's why you see one of these in most of the classrooms. I mean, there was a couple years where it's just a few select classrooms.
Well, and you don't, I mean, if you're, think about the cost of this too. I mean, what's a textbook cost now? $150 for a new textbook?
Probably between 100 and 150.
Something like that. Well, you can get the new, what's the new tablet that they're pushing through Google? It's the 7-inch instead of the 11. It's the Nexus.
Is it 99 or something?
Well, 159 or something like that. You got a tablet. I mean, I mean, they're within one round of textbook adoptions, they have paid for themselves because on average, the ebooks are half the cost of the textbooks.
Could you put the ebook on your Moodle site
Absolutely.
that the kids can access?
Absolutely. Just link to it. Absolutely. And then everything is in one place.
Because this year we don't have enough text to give our freshmen.
I know.
Science.
And we'd be crazy
So
to
we're
ever
down to a
buy a
class set.
physical textbook again. I mean, why would we ever buy?
Well, that's the dilemma right now.
Yeah.
Well, see, and that's when science came up for adoption. We said we don't want to adopt, we would like something, we would like software.
Mhm.
But of course, we didn't get either one of those things.
Well, and I pull the kids every year in my classes just to have some ammo for this, and for the last, umpteen years, there's not a single kid at the end that wants a physical textbook anymore. They all want ebooks. They don't want to carry them around, and they're crappy. I mean, they get written in, they're just dog-eared, and they're out of date. If you have an ebook, every year you have a subscription to the latest and greatest. It's not the one you bought.
It's the newest
It's
one.
the updated version, sure. So, and now, one last thing maybe before we go start building course rooms here. If you want to create a new question, this is kind of cool. Here's how you do it. You go into the quiz view. If I want to build questions to use in quizzes, when I'm inside the category tree, if I just hit, actually not the category tree, if I'm in the question bank, let me show you how to get here. I can either go, if I go down to question bank, I can either click on questions, which takes me right to where I am now, or if I go to category, if I click on like one in here, like if I'm looking inside the category of angle, pair, algebra, linear, one variable, one side, supplementary angles, that's what those questions are. If I click on that, it takes me to that question view. So there's that group of questions. If I want to add another one, I just hit create a new question. And don't use these wireless ones, those are different. But everything else is fair game. Like if I want to create I can do multiple choice or true false, but in a way with Moodle, why would you do that? because they're a much, much weaker type of question. Why wouldn't I do typically a short answer or a numerical? If I want to do a short answer question, then I just name it. It's already in this category for me. I would just give it a name up here. And here's where I would write the question text. Notice this beautiful text editor you got. I mean, you can go up here and you can change the fonts to be whatever you want them to be. I like Times New Roman, font size 14. I think works great. I can write the question. Well, I don't know. I mean, whatever you want. I can write the question in there, and I control how many points is it worth. I always say 10, my default mark. And then I can type feedback in here, general feedback that they'll always get if I want to.
Okay, so where do you put the answer?
Right here.
Oh,
Answer number 1. So if answer number 1 is it's a line segment. Then I can have it set up so they have to write line segment, or I can put in wildcards. I could do something like this. I could say, if they say the word segment, I'm going to give them credit. So I can go asterisk, which is a wildcard. So anything you say and then segment, and then anything after that will be recognized, whoops, as the right answer. I can do that.
Go back up.
Okay?
Okay, if we write, okay, let's say we want to find the density of an unknown substance.
Yeah.
Will Google switch the numbers for the next kid?
Oh, no, I'll show you, okay, I'll show you how to do that.
Okay.
On this one, on this kind of
You
question.
can write your basic question on
Write your
that.
basic question, and then
Okay.
you would just copy it. Like, if you want to make 10 versions of that, I could say, what's the density of this one?
Right,
Submit
Copy,
it,
copy,
go
copy.
back to it,
Copy,
turn it
copy.
on, change it, copy,
and
change
it'll
it,
randomize
copy.
it for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So that's one way to do it. The other way you can do it is, are we supposed to be done?
Yeah,
with lunch or
you
something?
were
It's lunch,
like
man.
Oh, let's
5 minutes
stop.
ago, man.